שבוע טוב, בוקר טוב, good morning. We're heading Parshat Korach, a very famous one with a lot of midrashim. All of
and is there a connection between Parshat Korach and the resignation of the Israeli government?
Yeah, so as we say, Parashat Noach is יפה נדרשת. You can use it anywhere and any way. And I think that with the political issues, you can use it not just in Parashat Korach. Anyway, let's go. Today I started with the famous midrashim at the beginning, and we'll do the famous one. Most of them we know from Rashi, but some additions, and we'll see. ויקח קורח בן יצהר בן קהת בן לוי. הדאו דכתיב אך נפשע מקריית עוז. So we have a פושע, brother, מקריית עוז. He came from a city of Oz, of not fearing from everybody. זה קורח, אך נפשע, זה פושע, שחלק נגד משה, ומרד וירד מן כבוד שהיה בידו. ואין נפשע אלא מרידה, a rebellious brother. כמו דעת אמרת, מלך מואב פשע בי. What does it mean פשע בי? Doesn't mean that he made a crime. It means that he made a rebellion against me. ומדיינים כברי החרמון, that's a continuation of the פסוק, אך נפשע מקריית עוז, ומדיינים כברי החרמון, שהעלית הארץ בריחיה בעדו. So the earth is depicted like some bars that opened its bars for 1 second and they closed again. ארמון, כן, כבריח ארמון, בריח means the key or the bars or the something that locks the door. So the same, the locker. So Midyanim, his fights against Moshe and Aaron is like כבריח ארמון, שחלק על משה ועל המקום. So he fought with the Moshe and the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the Midrash starts from חלק כנגד משה and ends ועל המקום. Okay? So because the Midrash himself uses the pasuk ומדיינים כבריח ארמון, it's like his fights, his midyanim, it's medanim, his fights with other people is like the lock of a palace. Why do you use a palace? Because apparently the Midrash understands that not only that he was a choilek on Moshe, he was choilek on Makom. And then why HaKadosh Baruch Hu used his palace, which is the earth, to fight against Korach. By this, we can understand that when Moshe asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu that the earth should open its mouth and swallow Korach, it's not just a big show or a big miracle or big death to Korach, but he wants not to punish by him and not to punish even by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but as somebody might say that it was by him. He wants HaKadosh Baruch Hu to use his own klei milchama in order to fight Korach. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses his own briach harmon, his own lock of the palace, opens it for a second and swallows Korach and closes again, in order to show that it's mamash itarvut of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is interfering into this battle. ויקח. אין ויקח, אלא משיכת הדברים רכים. So ויקח doesn't mean to pull, but to persuade. שנמשכו כל גדולי ישראל והסנהדראות אחריו. So Korach wasn't a pashut person, and that's why he convinced all the גדולים in order to join him. ומשה הוא אומר, ויקח משה ואהרון את האנשים האלה. וכן קח את הארון ואת בניו איתו. doesn't mean pull הארון with a rope. לכן הוא אומר, קחו עמכם דברים ושובו לשם, meaning that prepare yourself with things of תשובה. וכן ותוקח האישה בית פרעה, by Sarah, when Abraham comes to מצרים. So what does it mean ותוקח האישה? doesn't mean, so that's a chidush, because I thought, ותוקח האישה, that somebody told her, maybe not with a rope, but with a policeman, please come to the palace of the king. But the Midrash understands, no, ותוקח האישה בית פרעה, that they promised her nicely a lot of things, and with that, it's more difficult to understand how is it possible, because if we say that Avraham and Sarah came to a foreign country and then they told her, you come to the king, we understand Avraham couldn't do anything. But if we say that it was a temptation of words, of talking to her, bedvarim rakim, so it's more complicated. So we have to understand the situation, that Abraham and Sarah may be a little bit coordinated with the situation, because maybe they cheated, the Egyptians cheated them or something like this. ויקח קורח, הווי ויקח קורח, שבדברים רכים משך ליבם. Okay, so as you know, if you want to fight, to found a fight, you don't start with bad things against somebody, not even against the politicians, because people don't like to listen to bad things. People like nice things, and that's why the Gemara in Sotah says in the former parasha that Kalev ben Yefuneh didn't start with saying against the Meraglim and against Eretz Israel. He said and against their Shita, but he said very nice things about continuing what they had said, and then he said on the contrary. That's again with Korach, ויקח קורח בדברים רכים משך ליבם. ויקח קורח. So,
can I make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, vayikach has all kinds of meanings. It also means to acquire. Couldn't it not mean like bribery? He said that he's seducing them in a certain sense to support him for personal gain. Why not?
Okay, so Mamash, you took my words, because if you pay attention to how many vayikach you have here, I just wanted to say that this Midrash is unique, because he takes like 5 or 6 perushim just on the first word of the parasha, and you'll see different, not exactly what you said, but yes, here the Midrash starts with the nice things, and then it'll come to vayikach with a force. So, you know, Midrash is separated into 2 different explanations, and in one explanation you can do it softly, in the other one very firmly. So we'll go and see. But as Rashi said, I think it's not mentioned in this Midrash, but Rashi starts the parasha with saying, parasha zo yafe nidreshet b'midrash, and Rashi means that not only do we have a lot of explanations, but we have from different kinds of the same word can be interpreted in various perushim. ויקח קורח, let's go, על ידי מה נחלק, so here the Midrash doesn't בכלל explain the word ויקח קורח, and it's very clear to the Midrash that ויקח קורח meaning ויקח צד, it took a side to himself, yes, he was separate from the others. So here ויקח is just join others against Moshe and Aaron by convincing them, by saying that we have a mutual interests. Here, ויקח קורח made that ויקח קורח חלק לעצמו, made that he separated himself from the rest of the people. Why? So Midrash take for granted that's a word ויקח meaning separation, but why did he do that? על ידי אליצפן בן אחי אביו. Okay? So he was his cousin, שנעשה נשיא על משפחתו, דכתיב ונשיא בית אב למשפחות הקהתי, אליצפן בן עוזיאל, I think it's נשוא, or at the end of פרשת במדבר, so it's related, yes, and we have to understand that according to this Midrash, Korach came in the 2nd year, as most of the Meforshim say, because then Am Yisrael was a year by Chet HaEgel, staying next to Har Sinai, and then Chodesh Iyar of the 2nd year he wanted to move. Bekaf B'Iyar they moved Nasai Anan, and then they had all the preparations with the Nesim and the Galim and everything else, and from then on was Korach angry. Amar Korach, 4 אחים היו אחי אבא, ובני קהת, עמרם ויצהר וחברון ועוזיאל. Yes, my father is יצהר, קורח בן עמרם, סליחה, קורח בן יצהר, כן? And עמרם, זה האבא של משה ואהרון ומרים, וחברון ועוזיאל, 4 brothers. עמרם הבכור זכה אהרון בנו לגדולה ומשה למלכות. אוקיי, מי ראוי ליטול את השנייה? לא השני, שנאמר ובני קהת, עמרם ויצהר. So, אני בנו של יצהר, אני הייתי ראוי להיות נשיא על משפחות, והוא עשה בנו של עוזיאל, קטן של אחי אבא יהיה גדול עליי, so he took my cousin. So according to this midrash, the midrash wants to shorten the kin'ah of Korach and the chutzpah of Korach, and he didn't fight with Moshe and Aaron directly. The midrash understands that for Korach it was okay with Moshe and Aaron, but sometimes not the big issues מרגיזים אותך, make you angry, but the minor issues, just the cousin that he was given just a nesiut, it's not such a big deal, but he was given the nesiut and he didn't, לא היה מגיע לו. And according to this midrash, Korach didn't start with Moshe ve'Aaron, but with an ordinary kinah as everybody of us can do it. You know, everybody אכפת לו because of several issues and small minor issues. אני בנו של יצהר הייתי ראוי להיות נשיא על משפחות, והוא עשה בנו של עוזיאל קטון של אחי אבא יהיה גדול עליי, הרי אני חולק עליו ומבטל כל מה שנעשה על ידו, מכך ויקח קורח. So maybe we can understand, not as I understood before, ויקח קורח, that he took part of the ויכוח, he took himself to be separated, but maybe ויקח קורח all the list, he ממש took all the list of the family, yes, of the all the calculations, he considered them and thought about them and then understood that it cannot be like this, that the youngest one gets more than me, and that's why ויקח קורח. ויקח קורח, מה כתיב למעלה מן העניין? Now we can see that the midrash goes back and forth to all the אפשרויות, all the possibilities that we can see. So now the midrash stopped with the word ויקח and wants to go back to פרשת ציצית, to the סמיכות. מה כתיב למעלה מהעניין? כתיב ועשו להם ציצית. קפץ קורח ואמר למשה, טלית שכולה תכלת, מהו שתהא פטורה מן הציצית? זה פמוס מדרש, אמר לו חייבת בציצית. אמר לקורח, טלית שכולה תכלת, הן פותרת עצמה, 4 חוטים פותרים אותה, בית מלא ספרים מהו שיהיה פטור מן המזוזה, אמר לו חייב במזוזה. אמר לו כל התורה כולה, ריש עין ה' פרשיות, אינה פותרת את הבית, פרשה אחת שבמזוזה, אף קריאת שמע פותרת את הבית. So, it's a famous midrash, everybody knows it, but the חלוקה is very clear. According to Korach, there is no distinction, there is no hierarchy. He wants to לבטל, to cancel the hierarchy from the halacha, from the Judaism, and that's why he says כל העדה כולם קדושים. And the פתיל תכלת, that according to the pshat of the Torah, if you see והיה לכם לציצית, what והיה לכם לציצית? זה פתיל תכלת. דבר על בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לגרותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית. So זה פשט והיה לכם לציצית זה פתיל תכלת. If you learn the Mishnah in Menachos, Mishnah in Menachos says otherwise, that תכלת אינו מעכב את הלבן and לבן אינו מעכב את התכלת. A lot of people don't go with תכלת and it's fine. It's יוצאים ידי חובה. But according to the pshat, the tchelet is a unique thing that makes it into its name, gives it its name, and that because the tchelet is unique, is something that we have to yearn for. As Rashi says, that tchelet mazkir et hashamayim, et kisei hakavod, et hayam, whatever it means, it's something unreachable that you have to yearn for, lishof. By Korach doesn't want that, and once, as Rav Kook explains in several places, that Korach was like Cain. Rav Kook explains that Cain started with the thing that everybody is equal, and there is no distinction, and that's why he was angry at Hevel by that Hevel's korban was taken and his wasn't, because he thought that there is no distinction between one person and another. He wanted to cancel the uniqueness of somebody, the Levim, the Aharon HaKohen, it doesn't matter what, but everybody is unique. And the Christianity did the same thing, that by saying that all the mitzvot we cancel it. The Talmidim of Oto Aish canceled the mitzvot in order to make Christianity popular, and then they said everybody is equal. It is Rav Kook understands that it's the same mahalach of Korach, to cancel, to understand that there is just a circle and we're all equal on the circle. That's true, but the problem is that once you have a certain radius from the center of the circle, so everybody on the circle is equal. But the question is whether you and me are at the same radius. If Moshe Rabbeinu is close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so a normal person is not at this stage. He is far away from the radius. His radius is far away from the center, and that's why he's equal to maybe other people in his stage, but not Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's the uniqueness of Bait Maleh Sfarim or Mezuzah, so or Tzitzit. So according to this midrash, by the way, there is no distinction to Tzitzit. You see, there are at least two dugmaot. One example is from Tzitzit, and one example is from Mezuzah. So according to this midrash, the smichut is just to one of them, to Tzitzit at the end of Parashat Shlach. But if we had Mezuzah at the end of Parashat Shlach, Korach could be at the same place as well. Okay, there is no distinction, unique distinction just to Tzitzit, according to Midrash. Amar lekol haTorah, Amar lo, Moshe Rabbeinu said, yes, דברים אלו לא נצטווית עליהן ומלבך תבודען. So for the first time, do we see in the Midrash that Korach said explicitly to Moshe, you're a liar. אתה עוד הכתיב, ויקח קורח, אין ויקח, אין הלשון פליגה, שליבו לקחו. So from the fact that the Midrash uses ויקח קורח just now as a separation, I can understand that what we saw in Bet is not as a former pshat that Vayikach Korach, that he made a separation, because then the Midrash had to understand, to explain Vayikach there. But maybe, like as I said at the end, that he took all the list and made calculation, who is first, who is next. וכיוון שנאמר, מה ייקחך ליבך? Why do you think that you deserve more? הוא שמשה אומר להם, המעט כי הבדיל אלוקי ישראל. That's why Moshe talks about, Moshe understands the machloket and talks about the distinction of Shevet Levi, of Aharon, וביקשתם גם כהונה, because he understands the words of Korach. אמרו חכמים, חכם גדול היה קורח ומטועני אהרון. So now the Midrash wants to explain, according to the first Midrash, to the what we saw in Bet, Korach was jealous, so we can understand jealousy. But here we have the ta'anot of Bait Maleh Sfarim, of Talit Shekulat Chelet. So what does it mean? So the Chachamim says, Chacham Gadol היה קורח ומטועני אהרון. He was one of the Aaron barriers. שנאמר, ולבני קורח לא נתן, כי עבודת הקודש עליהם בכתף יישאו. וקורח בן יצהר בן קהת. וכשאמר משה, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת, מיד ציווה ועשו ריש נון טליתות תכלת, for the 250 people with him, אותן ריש נון ראשי סנהדריות שקמו על משה, שנאמר ויקומו לפני משה ואנשים בני ישראל 50 ו200 נשיאי עדה קריאי מועד. עמד קורח ועשה להם משתה, ונתעטפו בטליתות תכלת, באו בני אהרון ליטול מתנותיהם, חזה ושוק עמדו כנגדם. Okay, so according to this Midrash, the Midrash understands that the smichut is not for making the problems, the philosophical problem, as the former Midrash said, that because of the Tchelet, because of the mezuzah, did he fight against Moshe, but it was just the background. So they were covered with talitot Tchelet, and they are eating and drinking nicely without using the talit Tchelet. באו בני אהרון, now it starts. באו בני אהרון ליטול מתנותיהם חזה ושוק, עמדו כנגדם. אמרו להם, מי ציווה אתכם ליטול כך? לא משה? לא ניתן כלום, לא דיבר המקום כך. So, with the background of the talitot Tchelet, without maybe with fighting, with the philosophical question, pardon? So without fighting, hello? Is it okay? Hello? Hearing me? Do you hear me? Listen to me. Hi, you disconnected for a second, right? Mr. Posner, do you see me?
Now.
Hi. Okay, sorry, it disconnected. Let's go. So Korach stands.
It's not.
Is it okay now? Hello?
Hear you.
You hear me? Okay, so I thought that at home it would be better, and at home it's...
I hear you.
Okay, so let's go back. So Korach stands according to the Midrash with the Talit Tchelet. Okay?
No.
Korach stands with the Talit Tchelet as a background. Not, according to this Midrash, this part. Okay, Korach makes the Talit Tchelet as a background. He doesn't come with it to fight philosophically against Moshe, but he comes with a background and comes explicitly against Aaron and tells them, no, you shouldn't eat matnot kuna anymore, because we fight against everything that Moshe gave you. מיד עמדו, באו והודיעו את משה, הלך לפייסן, מיד עמדו כנגדו לקדמו לפני משה. So according to this midrash, the starting is with Aaron, okay? And just the next stage is against Moshe. And I think that what the Midrash wants to say is Aaron is a man of shalom, is a man of peace. He's not ragil to fight with people. And once you stand bechutzpah in front of such a person like Aaron and tells him, I make a fight, so then you broke the shalom. Then you take apart yourself and then you separate it. Because if you fight against Moshe, it might be in a loche, it might be in a mitzvah, it might be against him. But with Aaron is not a person that you can fight usually. And once they start with fighting with Aaron, it meant that the first stage that they made was to stand as people who make fight. We're not shalom anymore. We don't agree anymore to you taking the matnot keuna. Once they did it, then Moshe comes, הלך לפייסן. באו והודיעו את משה, הלך לפייסן. So Moshe, the next stage comes and understand that there is a מחלוקת. Moshe tries to לפייס אותם, to make a shalom. מיד עמדו כנגדו לקדמו לפני משה. So two things we see. We see that the talit of Tchelet was just the background, and they stood and started with Aaron with the background, and no longer do we agree that one person is more than another. We're all Tchelet. Secondly, they start with Aaron and not with Moshe. ואנשים מבני ישראל 50 ו200, מי הם? אליצור בן שדאור וחבריו, כן, זה הנשיא of שבט ראובן, האנשים אשר נקבו בשמות at the beginning of ספר במדבר, אף על פי שלא פרסמן הכתוב, נתן סימניהם, ומתוך המקראות אותם מבין אותם. So I think that by this midrash, we understand that they were less than דתן ואבירם or קורח ובניו, because their name are explicitly mentioned, and the name of אליצור בן שדאור, he was just annexed apparently, and that's why the Torah didn't mention his name. למשל, למה הדבר דומה? לבן טובים, שנמצא גונב כלים מבית המרחץ, ולא היה בעל הגניבה לפרסמו. The son of one minister was found stealing, and the police doesn't want to say. Usually nowadays, if somebody would steal like this, so the police would definitely say all the clues and all the simanim that you know exactly who is. but with לשון הרע, you don't want to say it, so you say, אמרו לו מי גנב כליך? אמר להם, אותו בן טובים, בעל קומה, שיניו נאות, שערו שחור, חותמו נאה. Okay, so he doesn't want to say explicitly the name, he just gives simanim, because it's choshuv to him that the people know to be afraid of the thief, but they don't have to say explicitly. אף כאן, אף על פי שסתמן הכתוב, בא ונתן סימניהם, ואתה יודע מי הם. So we have some signs that by which we know we're talking about. נאמר כאן, אלה קרואי העדה, נשיאי מטות אבותם, אשר אלפי ישראל הם, ויקח משה ואהרון את האנשים האלה שנקבו בשמות. That's the beginning of the ספר, ונאמר כאן, נשיאי עדה, קרואי מועד, אנשי שם. So we have, look how the Midrash made, the Torah makes chaos. The Torah, instead of קרואי העדה, the Torah says, קרואי and עדה here, נשיאי העדה. But instead of נשיאי מטות אבותם, כן, ראשי אלפי ישראל הם, so we say נשיאי העדה. So קרואי, instead of קרואי העדה, we say קרואי מועד, and instead of נשיאי מטות, we say נשיאי העדה. But by combining it, we make a little fog, but we know exactly what we're talking about. ויקח קורח, another time, לקחת ליטו, so that's the simplest explanation, just לקחת ליטו, so he took himself, yes, התלבש, and then והלך ליטו לצא מאשתו. שאמר הקדוש ברוך הוא למשה, קח את הלוויים מתוך בני ישראל וטיהרת אותם, וכה תעשה להם את טהרה מהאוויר ותר על כל בשרם. So we don't know, but Korach, according to this midrash, the midrash wants to point out that he was bald. He didn't have hair. He came to Moshe bald. Why? Because Moshe in Perek Chet, in Parashat Naso, tells Moshe to take all the Levim, and by coronating the Levim instead of the Bechoros, you have a process of Tahara, והעבירו טהר על כל בשרם. So they take a knife and takes away every hair that they have on their body. מיד הסכן לקורח, התחיל לחזור על ישראל, לא היו מכירים אותו. So חס ושלום, you know that in the Holocaust, we had people like this, that they lost their personality in a minute, because once they came to Auschwitz or other concentration camps, they lost their hair, and that was one of the shitot to lose their personality. So the same thing happens to Korach, happens to all of the Levim. The Midrash wants to point out that it wasn't so, rigid and solid ground on which Korach stood that then he started. No, Korach started from mishtane situation that changes, and now he finds himself without hair. אמר לו, מי עשה לך כך? אמרו לו, מי עשה לך כך? אמר להם, משה עשה בי. ולא עוד, אלא נתנני בידיי וברגליי, והיו מניפים אותי. Because we know that from Perek Chet in Parashat Naso, that one of the process of the Kedusha, of the Tara, of the Leviim, is to take them, והנפת אותם. So I'm like a chicken, they take me and surround themselves. ואומר לי הרי אתה טהור, והביא את ארון אחיו וכשתו ככלה, והושיבו באוהל מועד. So from this midrash, it's a little bit different. It's not just a jealousy. It's not a calculation of all the kibudim, honors among the family, and finding himself that he was a mekupach. No. And it's not just that he wanted, philosophical issues. Sometimes when you make a process and you makes a process to more than 22,000 Levim, you have to take into account that some of them, once you make, let's go to the army, and you have the tironut, how you start the tironut, you make a process, how they take people and then make them into soldiers in a few months and uniting them in a group, but psychologists have to think that among 1,000 people that do it, you'll have 5 with problems with the process itself. And Korach is one, that nowadays a lot of people who left Torah and mitzvot from the second generation, we know that they didn't do it because they had something against the Torah and mitzvot, but because they were ADHD and they weren't handled correctly. People say nowadays that there are a lot of researchers that a lot of people with ADHD, that we didn't know how to handle them correctly in the former generation, and we enforced them to learn Gemara, which is very difficult to a person with Afra'at Kesher. And then they just understood, if most of the day is Gemara, what can I do? I'm not shaykh to it, so they left. So Korach comes from a tragedy. It's not, he's evil, but it comes from a tragedy. It comes from a certain of a point that I don't agree to the process that you, Moshe, wanted to make me bold, to take me, and then he pays attention that somebody didn't do it. Who? Aaron Cohen, because Aaron Cohen didn't need any coronation. He was coronated before. So he is Kishto Kekala, V'oshivo Be'oel Moed. So, Kishto Kekala, I think that it implies, you remember, Vayechal Moshe, ויהי ביום כלות משה להקים את המשכן. So then the Midrash in Parashat Naso talks about a linkage between ויחולו השמיים והארץ, זה כלה, זה bride, and the end of עבודת המשכן. And אהרון אחיו doesn't have עבודת המשכן, at the end of the day, he just sits in his nice chair, and he's like a bride, and everybody is happy with him. And I, in order to be לחנוך אותי, in order to be a part of the Levim, I have to get bold. I don't like it. מיד התחילו שונאי משה להתגרות בו את ישראל. כלומר, לגרות בו את ישראל. סליחה. ואמרו, משה מלך, ואהרון אחיו כהן גדול, ובניו סגני כהונה. So before we saw that Korach didn't have any problem with Moshe and his sons. The only problem that he had was just with his cousin. But now they start doing again and again. Moshe is a king. His brother is a Kohen Gadol. His brother's sons are the Sganim, the vice Kohenim Gedolim. תרומה לכהן, מעשר לכהן, כ"ד מתנות לכהן, מיד ויקהלו על משה, מיד ויאמרו עליהם. So, as I said, according to this midrash, every big מחלוקת, political מחלוקת, philosophical מחלוקת, can start from a פרט קטן אחד of the process that is not adequate to any one of us. באותה השעה כינס קורח עדתו. I don't know if there is a solution to this, because once you make a process, you have to take into account that it's for 95% of the population, but for 5% they'll have problems with it. And a lot of people, in a family, you say something very normal, but some kid after years tells you that because of that sentence, I am very angry. So not amid there is a solution to this conflict, but you have to take them into account and to know that they exist. באותה שעה כינס קורח עדתו ואמר להם, הרבאתם עלינו מסוי יותר משעבוד מצרים. טוב לנו תחת מצרים מתחת ידכם וביקשו לסוקלו. So Korach uses even though that he didn't have any reason to mention Mitzrayim. He just had to fight against the minuim, against the appointments that Moshe did. He mentions again, after the Chet HaMeraglim, Mitzrayim. טוב לנו תחת מצרים, מתחת ידכם. So we prefer being under the Egyptian policemen and Egyptian soldiers than being תחת משה ואהרון. וביקשו לסוקלו, לפיכך וישמע משה ויפול על פניו. אמר להם משה, לא למלוכה אני מבקש ולא לאהרון הכי כהונה גדולה, שנאמר ואהרון מהו כי תלינו עליו. So Moshe was very angry by being guilty of nepotism. אמר משה, ריבונו של עולם, לוקח ציוויתני, ואתה אקרב עליך את אהרון אחיך ואת בניו איתו, והרי עומדים כנגדנו להורגנו. אמר בוקר ויודע השם את אשר לו. So according to this midrash, Moshe has a very good משענת to lay on it, because he knows that all the appointments that he made wasn't because of him, just because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So then that's why Moshe can surely promise Boker v'yodah Hashem et asher lo. Who told you who permitted you to use the name of Hashem? Because Moshe knows that it's not me, it's just Hashem. So he says, okay, Boker v'yodah Hashem et asher lo. מהו כן? אמר רבי נתן, אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, אם נתקבצו כל חרטומי העולם וביקשו להפוך את הבוקר לערב, לא יוכלו. וכשם שהבדלתי בין אור לחושך, כך הבדלתי אהרון להקדישו בקודש הקודשים. So the distinction between light and darkness is not something that can be reversible. It's not something that it's just a matter of decision that you can switch. No, it's, you know, today now it's light. At the end, the evening it will be darkness. So כך הבדלתי אהרון להקדישו בקודש הקודשים. So the בחירה of אהרון is the same thing. מיד וישלח משה לקרוא לדתן ואבירם בני אליהו ויאמרו לו נעלה, לא נלך ולא נבוא, נקטן לא נעלה, פתחו פיהם לפורענות, לומר שהם מתים בירידה ולא בעלייה, כשם שאמרו כך מתו. So according to the midrash, דתן ואבירם said לא נעלה, meaning from now on we don't go up, we go just down. So go down, it's like מתים בירידה. Okay, and we'll finish with the next paragraph. וירדו הם בכל אשר להם חיים שעולה. אמר משה, הואיל ולא רצו ללכת אצלי, אני אבוא אצלם, אולי יתביישו ויחזרו בהם. So משה מחל על כבודו. Moshe wanted to go to suit them, and he came himself to them. שנאמר, ויקום משה וילך אל דתן ואבירם. But כשראו אותו, התחילו לחרף ולגדף. But by seeing him, not only that they didn't stop, they started cursing. שנאמר, ודתן ואבירם יצאו ניצבים. So they stood, וכי יושבים או קוראים או נופלים יוצאים בני אדם. Of course, when you go out, you stand. אלא יצאו הם מחרפים ומגדפים. How do I know that ניצבים means to curse? נאמר כאן יציאה והצבא, ונאמר בגוליית הפלישתי יציאה והצבא דכתיב. ויצא איש הביניים ויגש הפלישתי השכם והערב ויתייצב 40 יום. פלישתי, גוליית, curses הקדוש ברוך הוא for 40 days. מה יציאה והצבא ויצא, ויגש ויתייצב, בחירופים וגדופים, אף כאן בחירופים וגדופים, לפיכך פתח משה ואמר אם כמות כל האדם ימותון אלה, and ותפתח הארץ את פיה, I finish, בואו ראה כמה קשה המחלוקת, שכל העוזר במחלוקת הקדוש ברוך הוא מאבד את שיחו, שכך כתיב, ואש יצאה מאת השם ותאכל את 50 ו200 איש. So the Midrash understands that they were killed by fire because fire finishes everything and destroys everything and מפרקת את הכל. יש? Fire makes into ashes, into פירורים, into crumbs. That's why, because הקדוש ברוך הוא hates the בעל מחלוקת, and that's why הקדוש ברוך הוא lost their זכרם. The Midrash doesn't understand here, doesn't explain here regarding the bli'at karka, but we don't have time. and we saw it before that the bars of the palace opened, swallowed, and closed back. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu used his own clay milchama. Let's stop here. Shavua tov.
But what Cahn did interesting that last week the Meraglim described Eretz Israel as an Eretz Ochelet Yoshveh, and
Right.
this week, Bativla Eretz Atut.
It did.
Wow, interesting. נכון? אוקיי. מעניין. So it's ממש symbolizes that it was like a small Eretz Israel. You can say that he used the bad things of Eretz Israel in order to punish Korach and Adato. We have to think it over. שכוח.
Very good.
להתראות.
Shavuot Tov.
שבוע טוב.